I'm in the process right now of making two bookcases, and I've already assembled the carcasses for both of them. They've already been glued up. And after I got them out of the clamps, they both had just a tiny amount of wobble to them. And in this video, I want to show you guys how I got rid of that wobble using a palm router and a mortising bit. I've already removed the wobble on my two bookcase carcasses, but I just wanted to demonstrate to you guys the process that I used to remove the wobble using the palm router. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate the process by using this old dirty and dusty shop stool, which has a pretty decent amount of wobble. Now, this shop stool has turned legs, so I'm not going to use this to actually remove the wobble, but I'm going to show you how you would go about doing it. So this stool has a decent amount of wobble to it, and as I rock it back and forth, the two legs to keep lifting off of the surface are this one and this one over here. So you want to remove material from the other two legs in order to level the stool. So you'd want to remove material from this leg and this leg, or the two legs that never leave the surface as you're rocking it back and forth. Now, this method that I'm going to show you that I use to level my bookcases can not only be applied to just bookcases and shop stools, but it can also be applied to tables and blanket chests, or just basically anything with four legs. You can apply this method to level it if it needs it. Now, if it does have turned legs, like this shop stool, for example, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to apply this process, but it's not impossible. And that'll make more sense later. For this demo, I took a piece of scrap wood and I cut it square to make a demo leg. And I have this leg clamped in my vise. And on two opposing faces of my demo leg, I have a piece of scrap wood, one piece of scrap wood on either side. Now, the pieces of scrap have nice square edges, and I clamped it to the leg so that their top edges, so the top edges of the scrap and the bottom edge of the leg, they're all in the same plane, or they're nice and flat, and everything is flush. And I have this clamped down really good so that everything is secure, and now we can move on to the next step. Now, if this were an actual leg of, say, a table or a stool, you would just have that item flipped upside down on your bench, nice and secured, and you would do the same process. When you're using this method, it's a good idea to only take off a small amount of material. I have my bit set to a depth of about a 32nd of an inch, or around 31 thousandths of an inch. And you could adjust that depending on how bad of a wobble you have on your piece of furniture. Now, it's a good idea to just take off a little bit and then go to your table saw or whatever flat surface you have and then check again for wobble, and then just go back and forth. And it's also a good idea to take off material from both of your high legs, or the legs that were staying on the table when I demonstrated the wobble. And one more thing I'd like to point out, that the base of whatever router you're using should always be making contact with both blocks on either side of that's clamped to the leg. So the base of the router should never leave one of the blocks. If your table leg is really wide and you have to stretch your router base across and it leaves one of the blocks of wood, you're going to need to find a larger base plate that you can attach to your router so that doesn't happen. You always want to make sure that the base plate remains on both of the blocks of wood the entire time you're removing your material. So once you use this method to remove some material and you find out that you still have a little bit of wobble and you want to remove some more, you're going to want to take these blocks of wood that you clamped on either side and give them a nice fresh edge at the table saw, or just use two new blocks of wood, or you could just take them and flip them around for one more pass. That's because if you go to clamp these on again for another pass, it's going to be difficult, or it's going to be more difficult to get this top of the, or the bottom of the leg flush with each of the scraps of wood on either side. It's a lot easier to do that if you have a nice clean edge on each side. So that's all I have, guys. I just wanted to share this method that I use to level my bookcase carcasses. It worked out pretty well, and you should be able to use this, as I mentioned, for anything that has 4 legs. Oh, and I almost forgot that if you have something that has turned legs, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to clamp the blocks of wood on either side. However, if you take those blocks of wood and you were to form a cove on the inside that's complementary to your leg, you should be able to clamp those on much easier, and that same process that I demonstrated should work for a turned leg. So I hope you guys find this useful, and that's it, and I'll see you next time.